Gigantic is a really fast-paced PvP action game. It draws its roots from action RPGs, from shooters, and from MOBAs. And so when you look at designing a game like this, the game mechanics and the environments go hand in hand. A lot of decisions that you make about how rules in the game work, like how fast do you sprint, how quickly do you move, how high do you jump, how long can you sprint before you get tired, how much cover is there. These sorts of things tie in closely between the mechanics decisions you make and the map. And so the start of our process was really figuring out how this game would work and what the identity of the game is. When you start out a game, you have a lot of ideas about how it should play and what it should be, but you don't really know how all the subtleties are going to fit together until you sit down and play it. And so we've been doing that over the last year and a little more than that, and wanted to share some of our progress as far as that goes. The team that I have here today is Nick Millay, one of our gameplay designers. Hello. Tomas Gomez, environment artist.
Hello.
Matt Barrett, also known online as MC Barrett, concept artist. And Michael Pucci, our head effects artist. And these guys are part of the core team that works on the maps and figures out how they'll fit together and work. Today's kind of fun because we are going to be talking about two maps, the map that we're showing at PAX and actually the next map. So you guys will get some very exciting gray box art to look at, and then you also get to see some of Matt's awesome concepts. The other thing that's maybe a little different about this workshop compared to the rest of them is that I wanted to let people know that we are actually hiring for this team. And we've got on the site right now, the job site, that we are looking for another senior environment artist. You have to have a lot of experience, otherwise we're just going to have to filter through those resumes. But if you've been working, especially in Unreal, but really it has mostly to do with your artistic chops, we are looking to hire another very senior, very talented environment artist. And in addition to that, we're looking to hire a full-time level designer. Maybe or maybe not, because Nick complains at me that he's overworked. Nick actually works on skills and character design a lot too. And so during this first stage, as I said, because the design of maps is so closely tied to how all the mechanics work, it's really important to have a guy who is really working on the timing and the feel of characters and core gameplay, focused also on how the maps were laid out. But moving forward, it's important for us to get somebody who's thinking about maps all the time. Okay, so I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Nick. You want to start?
Yeah.
Talking about the map that we're showing at PAX this weekend.
Oh, sorry. All right. So the map you'll see everyone playing at PAX this weekend is a map we call Mistforge. It's a map that has gone through a large number of iterations to get to where it is today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to what it looked like when I first started on the team, before we really sat down to look at the design of the map and how it flowed, and it's come a long way. So
Don't do it.
yeah. All right, so let's take a look at this. So this is actually from our prototype build of the game. This is, you'll notice that it's pretty different. There's a lot more going on. I know it's kind of hard to see from this screenshot. We actually planned to fly through the map and weren't able to do that. So you'll see there's some staircases in the back that wind down behind the wall in the front, and they sort of go to nowhere. You'll notice that there's actually like a second level. So if you look near the middle of the image, there's like some catacombs down below and there's a bridge overhead. So it actually had two full tiers that you can move through. And so you couldn't really tell who was on the top, who was on the bottom when you were looking at the mini-map. There was a lot of confusion there. And you could actually summon creatures down below. So there was a lot of stuff going on. And the hallways were really tight. It felt a lot like some of the maze-like old shooter levels to some degree. You'd go down one hallway and you just see a straight-on dead.
Yeah, if I can jump in a little bit. We knew when we were talking about the identity of the game that we wanted very dynamic gameplay, and that some of that had to do with verticality, being able to jump up on things, really having to look above and below you, drop down on enemies, and to make use of the 3D space. And so when we first started exploring those ideas, we went all in on it, and it was really overboard. When you're working on a game internally, there are the kind of things that are really easy to judge for the team working on it, but then there are the kinds of things that, because you see it every day, it's easy for you to overlook the parts that are kind of hard to understand. And so when we were playing, it was hard to deal with verticality, but we still kind of knew about it. Plus, it was the one map, and we were all running around in there every day. But when we brought new people in, either new to the team or, from an early stage, we were trying to bring in people who had never seen the game periodically and just have them look at it and give us feedback, they were so lost every time there was somebody up on another level.
That was a little bit of me, but yeah. Yeah. So this is what the side of the map looked like near your spawn points, like right near your guarding room. This is right outside of it. Over here is the forest point, what it used to look like. There was more stuff down here. And I'll jump to the middle of the map where the river is. This is actually what it used to look like in the middle of the map. These were really tall. When you came out from the underneath, you just were greeted with a wall. You couldn't really see where you were going. And one of the things is, because of the perspective we have and the type of game it is, map awareness is a pretty big deal. Being able to know where you are, where you need to go at all times is pretty important. So moving forward, here was the next iteration of the map. A little bit different. We iterated really quickly. Like a lot of these iterations happened over the course of 3 or 4 weeks at most, and there was a lot of other ones in between. I just picked the largest changes out. So here we actually removed a lot of the stuff in the middle and wanted to make it feel really different. If you're here today and you get to play the game, you'll notice that there are lots of areas of the map that cater to different kinds of players. And this is what we were trying to push with this first iteration, is really open up one area to feel really different. So I removed a lot of the obstacles and made the space just feel different to the point that you remembered it, so you knew exactly where you were.
Yeah, and that range characters could feel like, okay, this is a spot where I can kind of command the space.
Yeah. Yeah, because we really didn't have any one space where it called out to a specific type of character before that. That bridge in the middle actually raised and lowered. And it was a cool idea, but actually was pretty terrible.
Yeah, we went through several different versions of the bridges that raised and lowered and bridges that extended, and there were actually multiple spots in the map that had that. There were ones where it was player controlled. There were ones where you could use it to kind of trap you. There were ones where it went up all the way, ones where it went up partially and you could make a running jump across this chasm.
Yeah.
There were ones where it was timed, the water would flow during, for a couple minutes, and then it would stop flowing and the bridges would change. And really what we found was that all that was just unnecessary complexity.
Yeah, I think in this version, actually, if you went back to the dam here, there was a valve that if you stood next to it, it raised your side, but not the other. So screw that.
Everybody totally understood that
when
we
was
jumped
confusing
in.
as hell. Yeah. So that's what we did here. The water was still flowing. We opened it up. The rest of the map, here's what the home side of the map changed. You'll notice that some of the flow is a little bit similar to what we have now. The points near your base, they're all positioned relatively the same. We still have the underground area. You actually got to it from the point on the lower part of the screen there.
Yeah, one of the things, though, that was very different about the underground areas, and you touched on this earlier, but just to call it out here, was there would be the same space, if you're looking top-down, would have playable space above ground and below ground. And we've moved away from doing that in any significant area. So there are small overhangs here and there and things like that, but not whole different conceptual areas to map. Talk over. I am just blasting the mic. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's one thing for us to kind of draw on some of that map layout that you can normally do in a shooter, and having it work okay for the combat. But when you looked at the strategic elements in the game and the need to coordinate with your team, not being able to tell what level somebody was on, and of course, we could have added more stuff to the minimap to indicate what height you were on or things like that, really would have, or really made it harder to coordinate and plan what you were doing. So we needed to remove that.
One thing I'll also point out here is, look at my beautiful art. I took one prop and used it 1,000 times. When we're iterating, we tend to not care. Yeah, the environmentalists thought, no offense to them.
We
it was,
being the designers, I think the
yeah,
the
we
level
being
artists
me.
cared every
Yeah,
time, yeah.
they were crying a little inside. But, for iteration purposes, I just, whatever props we can use, whenever you're iterating on a map or things like that, there's a certain point at which you care about arting it, and we were not at that point as knew we needed to iterate on it. So you'll see a lot of that. And, yeah, moving forward.
I like how, now that you're starting to design levels, we just gave you a cube and a cylinder to just not squash and stretch our props anymore.
Yeah.
I had to ask special for the cylinder, to be fair. Yeah, so that was our next one, and you'll see, there weren't too many major revisions. Obviously, like James said, there were some smaller changes in between that we didn't feel to show. So this was the next iteration of it. It's getting really close to what we have now. In this one, the biggest thing is that the underground is gone entirely, and all of the buildings sprouted green hair on top. What that actually is that was a hack we put in to prevent people from going up there because some people just didn't want to listen. So,
for those who haven't played the game, there are characters that have some really high sort of super jump abilities, and then a character with a grappling hook, things like that. And so we needed to clearly mark the areas that you couldn't get to.
yeah. So that would prevent them from going up there. And you also see the bottom point is a lot smaller. We actually changed the size of it a good bit. We felt like fighting on it. Felt like this big open plain. So we want to sort of normalize the size of the areas you are fighting and get them sized appropriately. And what you probably can't see too well from this screenshot is behind the first building in the front, there's actually some resemblance of building like a defensive line that wasn't there before. Or if you're in the map, we have the current map that we're showing, there's a structure that sits right next to the Guardian's room that allows him to, that allows your team to defend that space. There's a bridge over it, which you can sort of see here, and it's just a high ground across the gap, across the aqueduct that's flowing there, to give you a feeling of presence, like this is our side. If anyone comes up here, we have a strong vantage point to defend it. And also in the back here, I think this is the first time we had what we call the back path. So you'll see some grass, I guess on the left side, near the back, where you can't really make out a whole lot because of the fog, but that was our first attempt to really create a strong path for attackers to have a way to get in. That's sort of unnoticed, but it required a little bit of teamwork and cooperation, or based on the skills your character have. And right now that sort of looks like a more ruined structure and things like that.
Yeah, and what you see through all of these is that there are several different masters we're trying to please here, and different sources of the changes. One, there's stuff that's just trying to make it have better flow as a map, and a lot of the simplification has to do with that. Another part has to do with understanding the mechanics of our game, understanding how big a combat area should be, understanding how high a super jump should be. One of the things that happened not too long after Nick started was he kept complaining at me that I had all my super jump heights were way too high. And he was right. We shrunk them multiple times after he came on board, and every time we did that, it had an impact on the map because there are a dozen places, well, more than that, many places throughout the map where the height difference from one level to another is based on those jump heights. And so every time we did that, it made the game more playable until we finally got the right height, I think.
Yeah. And I think one thing you'll notice in regards to that is one of the things I kept complaining or crying about was just the lack of normalization in terms of verticality. The verticality was really extreme, and I think we definitely need to start extreme, and I actually go against my word when I show you the new map that I started prototyping, but we'll forget about that for now. And, is pulling a lot of things down, especially when I go to the next image of this version. I think you'll see in the middle of the map how things have changed quite a bit. We do have a lot of verticality in our game compared to a lot of other games, but it's definitely not as extreme as as it used to be. You see in a lot of shooters these days that verticality is thrown out for the ease of being able to constantly keep track of who you're fighting against and things like that. But because of the freedom of movement we give our characters and to let you really enjoy navigating the map and breaking the flow of it purposefully, we brought things into a point where we thought it was a good balance.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And then the last thing I was going to bring up about it is learning the strategic needs of the game. Like this is something like the 10th map that we worked on. It's the first one we've actually taken to a kind of finished art state. Though Tomas did a lot of work on art for a lot of maps along the way.
This
But-
was the finished art state.
No, yeah, we'll show that later. But we had a lot to learn about the game in terms of things like how many summoning circles should there be in a point. So like this map that we're showing at PAX is what we expect to be one of the larger maps, and it's got 8 spots where you can summon creatures. The very first map that we did with these mechanics had 17 spots where you could summon creatures. Turned out it was too many.
It was a big map.
Yeah, players never ran into each other, oddly enough. Yeah, so learning, what the strategic needs of the game were for the pacing that we wanted, learning, okay, how many side paths should there be, how accessible should they be, things like that was part of this process. One of the other tough things, I think, for the guys who were first working on this map is because we were trying to find the identity of the game, it wasn't a matter of, okay, let's make the safe choice for this map that will probably work. It was always, let's push the boundaries. So as I said, we think of this map as a big map. It's a big map not accidentally. It's a big map because we set out to make sort of the most complex map, which, thinking back on the fact that then it would be the map that we first bring to PAX. Maybe not my best decision ever, but it really helped us understand the limits of the game. And so what you'll see when we get to the new map that we're working on is actually, this is the map we would actually use to introduce the game to people.
Yeah, if we could rewind time, that would be the map you would play today, but we can't. So one of the other things I just noticed looking at this is when we add destructible cover. So a lot of points in the current map, you'll see just railings that are about half character height and some other obstacles. You're able to blow all those up. Like they're all destructible. You could, if a guy's hiding behind it, you just chew away at that and it'll go away, and then he's going to have to run somewhere else. So you'll see little bits of, there's like these little gray walls that are everywhere, all over this thing. That's what those are. That was the first time I figured out how to do it in a very hacky way, and I just put it everywhere, because everyone likes that. So,
Yeah. Actually, since we're talking about destruction, why don't we let Pooch talk about that a little bit?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, one of the things and goals that we wanted to do is have a map that, and please jump in if I misspeak in any way, but James and I have had quite a few discussions about how we wanted the map to evolve over the course of a match. And one thing we always wanted to do is have, like Nick had just said, some strategic points where you could hide behind them in the beginning, but it was very easy to get rid of that cover and change the dynamic of that fight. Somebody who thought they were safe at one point, wouldn't. So what we did is we looked into what Gears and Epic had done with their Destructibles and kind of wanted to find out what we could do that would work for our speed of gameplay and something that was network safe and things like that. And we started small with low cover, and we've gotten all the way up to pretty insane physics sims that are baked into skeletal actors and real-time physics in the level, so that when something blows up, you can kick pieces around. There's a lot of that stuff going on now in the map that hopefully should seem seamless, and that was our goal. And we're going to continue to evolve that and make it even more complex, I hope, in the future, so that players, guardians, minions are going to interact with that stuff quite a bit more in the future.
And there are actually several different kinds of destruction in the map. So there's the stuff that we were just talking about that players can destroy, but there's also really big environmental features that only the guardians destroy. And this was something that was actually added fairly late in some cases. The first map I was talking about with the 17 capture points had one version of this. So every battle starts with fighting for map control, trying to kill guys in the enemy team, trying to kind of establish an advantageous position to start, but then concludes with the clash, where both the guardians exit their lair and come to the center of the map. And the plan there was when they come to the center of the map, they're just going to smash stuff up and reshape the battlefield because our needs play-wise are going to change for that. And the first map where we did that, it was massive.
We had 20, if I remember, we threw it together in about a week and a half. That's
Yeah.
about all we had. There were 26 skeletal actors, and I think I simmed somewhere in the neighborhood of 185,000 pieces.
Yeah.
And these all fired off simultaneously in the middle of the gameplay. And it actually ran really well.
Yeah, it was pretty epic, too.
They destroyed a size of probably, I don't know.
You know,
it
I
was
mean-
big.
yeah, I mean-
It was.
You did that in a week.
It was enough that
Yeah.
it fit both Guardians and the entire team, and you could probably put 4 more
Yeah,
Guardians in
I
that
mean,
space.
that was the map with the 17 capture points, so it's even bigger than the map we're looking at.
Probably almost the size
at
of the Clash area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
blew up the size of the current Clash area.
Yeah. And then, Pooch said, we shouldn't do that again. We should find another
It was fun,
way to
but
do that.
we'll see.
But we did take some learning from that in terms of technology and other pieces. And then later we added the rampage, this mechanic where the Guardians leave their lairs and travel across the map. And this actually ended up working to really good effect in Mistforge, where each time your Guardian rampages across the map, he breaks something else on the enemy side of the map, turning what was a defensive fortification into a ramp for you or something advantageous for you.
Fortunately, I don't have any images of that, so I apologize.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we actually didn't do that until we actually arted the final version of the map. And the environment artist, right, you want to break all our art? And we were like, yes, we do.
Yeah.
So that worked out well.
So we're just talking about that is, the destruction stuff that's in the current playable PAX demo is a long way along, but it's not our ultimate presentation of it at this point. And so the nice thing with this new map that we're working on is we're starting very early in the process. So environment understands, design understands, effects understands exactly where we're going with the process so that we can all move forward together. So I'm not coming in at the tail end kind of a thing and kind of to retrofit this stuff into the level. But, all in all, it works out
Yeah.
really well, I think, for the gameplay.
Yeah, I think, game development is a process of discovery, and the key is like how much attention you pay as you go along.
Yeah.
And learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to move along to my next image, this iteration. So we're still not at the final version of the map or close to it yet. But so this is what the river looks like now. You probably notice quite a few differences. One is that pit is about a third as deep as it used to be. And it's still pretty open. The river still flows through it, but we added a capture point here that wasn't there before. And I think in this version, there's actually a capture point behind the waterfall, which actually, it's actually like right underneath here. It's actually not on top. You can actually get up on top on this version. And yeah, this map we found we played a lot better.
Yeah.
People knew where they were going, and it was just simpler overall.
Yeah,
And then,
things bottlenecked a little bit too much, though,
yeah,
which is
this
where
this
some of the
this
additions
area,
came.
yeah, became a bloodbath, and it would stay that way for the entire match, and it stalemated pretty bad. So we moved on to our next iteration, which is where we're at now. This is what it looked like before it was arted. Notice lots of use of this one column, even stretching it sideways.
It's okay, Tomas.
Yeah.
I took it all out.
He weeps a little every time.
So yeah, here, well, you can't exactly see it. I apologize, but up in the back we added another point that's up high behind this wall that you got through by going up some stairs. But and then we removed the points down here. At one point we actually tested out having a point on each side of this river, but it didn't make the bloodbath any better, so we ripped it out. So now it's actually the sneakiest way through the map is right through the middle because everyone's focused on the sides, which totally makes no sense, but it's pretty spectacular. Yeah, this is where we came to. We added some defensive high points here. So this balcony wasn't here before, but it actually provides just enough cover along the bottoms of the riverbed to each side for people that are fighting down there to feel like they have somewhere to go to when they're under fire. And these balconies are actually one of the first things we tested destroying. So when your Guardian rampages through, those balconies in the middle will just collapse and become ramps for your team to run up.
Yeah,
and
just the
get into-
balcony on the other side.
Yeah, the balcony on the enemy side, yeah. So it stops becoming a defensive vantage point for them and starts becoming just an easy way for your team to get into their base.
I guess I've never seen that balcony. It seemed like we were always going
It,
up those crowded ramps.
It
Good
breaks
job.
after the first rampage, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to happen within the first couple minutes of the
Yeah,
game.
the first 5 to 10 minutes,
You know,
one
and
of them will get broken.
Yeah, and that speaks again to the way that the map design ties into the overall design of the game. We looked at ways to make sure that battles didn't drag out. So if you're getting an advantage, hey, let's start speeding it up.
Yeah, and so here's the back half of the map. You'll notice that there's some like support beams going across the aqueduct. It's like a minor addition that went a long way. Before they were there, characters that were in there were just in a pit of death, and they just got chewed up. But just adding those few things, characters go in and out of line of sight so quickly that like you can still hit them, and when you hit them, you feel really good. And when you don't, you just feel like, oh, there's cover in the way, that's okay.
Yeah. And then they also became additional options for traversal there.
Yeah, and it gave players, attackers, a way to cross over that to the other side, and there's a lot of ways you can break the flow of the map that I'll let you figure out. And then in the back, we changed the grass that was the back path. You see there's like some temple columns and things like that. So this became a more structured thing. This point down the bottom really didn't change a whole lot. And then that would bring us to the final version of the map, I think, which is where we're at today. This is what it looks like when it's arted. I have to ignore the editor bits. Couldn't cut those out really quickly, but so this is where the environment art team came in, and you could actually see the multiple destruction states for the balconies based on whether it's up or down and things like that. And then this is probably one of the most notable things is this point on the bottom, the flow here changed quite a bit, and that was just like, hey, sometimes, there wasn't a whole lot of complexity to how that was laid out, and the concept artist that was drawing that point was like, hey, I just want to do something fun here. And I was like, all right, go ahead. We'll make it work. We'll figure it out. And we actually iterated on that a little bit to get it to where it is, but it turned out it plays pretty well.
Yeah, once we hit this stage, there were also a lot of other changes that came in as we brought in people to test. All the stuff that we had gotten used to navigation-wise, and, the map was, as you could see, progressively getting better. But as soon as we brought in people who'd never played the game before, they still managed to get lost, still managed to have trouble finding their way around. And so there was a lot that we had to figure out about making sure sight lines were good to kind of your next objective, things like that, that caused little shifts here and there. I say little shifts because I didn't have to make the art changes.
Yeah.
Okay, so now Tomas is going to talk a little bit, I think, about what it's like, what the process is to put art into a level when your designers don't know what the hell they're doing.
The process working with the designers.
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant.
We definitely kept this it was a very organic process, and it was very back and forth and bouncing off each other's ideas. Nick talked a little bit about the concept artists. Before Nick, I think it was just artists throwing gray box stuff, and we were just really worried about looks for the most part. So, hence why there's a lot of problems with the design. That was my map, so. But so our process was very organic. So Nick would take our old props. Now he uses cubes and ramps and very simple stuff. So there's no crazy stretching or weird objects. So he would build these maps, and so we would take that, and we'd actually have our concept artist then take that and try to get ideas from it. And so he would do actually paint overs of the map after Nick had a good spot of the design where he felt very comfortable, and would do a paint over. And this looks pretty close to where we are already. However, we would take that, and then our map is very, each area is very unique. And so we actually made each prop by hand, custom for that spot. So we would actually, after that concept got made, we would then do a gray box version of that concept and build it in there, and then we'd play test some more. It was a very organic process. And again, once we gray box there, design hits it a little bit, and we're bashing ideas between concept art and the actual environment artists. You actually see there's frog statues, and we were like, well, the frog statues aren't that cool. Let's actually build the statues into the dam. And once we build that into the gray box, the concept artists again go into that and do another paint over and push it a little bit farther. And we would bounce ideas again. That would finally take us to the final asset, which is a really grand dam. This is the actual asset that's in the map.
I want to say at least 10 times during that process, they asked when we'd stop making changes, and we said, oh, this is the last one.
Okay, now we can start arting. Good.
And
Okay,
that-
excellent.
That we know of right now. I might have said that part after I walked away.
This is the last time, right, Nick?
Yep.
And this definitely happened throughout the whole map. Like, this is one of our more visually appealing ones, but we did this all throughout the map. This is the clash area right here. And actually, this is at the point, I think the clash area is one of the last things we kind of tweaked on design-wise. So this is when we started handing him boxes. And so maybe not as cool looking, but it was definitely easier to switch out props for us as artists. And this guy is amazing with you give him a cube and a cylinder, he can build worlds.
Yes, I can.
So he actually took cubes and built the temple, and then we just took that, the concept artist then just did a paint over. We kept pretty close to the design, and we did the same process. We would gray box that, test it, and then once that was fine, then finally do the final art asset. This was the bell point that Nick was pointing out. You can see in the top right corner, we did many versions, and I think from his first thing that he showed you is very box, and we actually arted it that way. And after playing it a bit and looking at it, we're like, this could be cooler. And so that's when we start. This is one of the major areas where that was a lot of back and forth between design. Like, we could push this a little bit more visually appealing, and we'd bash the ideas off of you, and we'd show you this cool concept, and you'd give us the approval. Again, stretched cubes and boxes. Like, I think this prop is everywhere. It's just stretched. It's all one prop. And do the concept of this. And this is pretty close to what the final art asset was. Bunch of different areas. This is the hidden path. The statues are a little bit different. Little walk area. And this is after, I think this is the image right before you finished design. And we did all the gray boxes here. And after we did the gray boxes, ripping all the mishmashed props that Nick placed, we'd do gray boxes, and then the concept artist would paint over again. Also, so once we got the map to a good point, at least art-wise, the actual assets, we played a lot with also thinking of design with lighting. And the concept artist would actually take our screenshots again of our map and play with pushing it a little bit farther, but also playing with lighting and trying to make focal points. This is the middle area underneath the dam. Definitely one of our eerier, more mystical feeling spots. We definitely played with lighting a lot in our level, and we were playing with how our characters would play off the environment. And we would do that just in concepts and paint overs and testing different stuff. You can see this is our old, on the left side right here. We were even playing with textures and playing with how characters would look on the environments. And we were playing with values and trying to actually mute the environment a little bit so the characters would contrast and show a little bit more, because that's the main focus in our game is the characters.
You can also see actually a little bit in those images how much the characters have changed
Very true.
visually. Like, that's not how the characters look now.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a lot of paint overs, testing different shaders for the characters and different shaders for the environments, and trying to kind of get a good match so everything blended well together. And we definitely did that a lot. And we did paint overs of just the characters and like different effects that could be on them, rim lights, or even. And this is also the environments too, like playing with like what kind of fog, how much detail should we have in the back, and so the characters very much become the focal point.
Yeah, you know, one of the questions I've gotten a lot when we've talked to people here at PAX is, where did the art style come from? And one of the things I explain is it's just a lot of conversation between the artists. And I think this is a good example of it, of them just being very thoughtful and talking about all the possibilities and what works and what doesn't, what the consequences are of different choices.
Yeah, we definitely have a very talented art team, and they're all very passionate, and we all bounce ideas off each other. Again, it's a small team, but we're all very passionate and
Yeah, and thoughtful, I think.
and
is
thoughtful.
something.
And we're there's not too much of an ego, and we're constantly bouncing ideas and giving
You
critiques.
did just call yourself very talented, I think, a moment ago.
I said artists.
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah,
I'm
go
not.
ahead.
I did want to speak to one thing that helps this process actually work, and I wanted to tip the hat to the engineers on this team, because we have got an engineering team that keeps the build stable enough that we can play every single day. And without that stability, we wouldn't have a way to iterate as quickly as we do. We have, a concept artist spend a couple days, paint over something, and within, I would say, less than a week, we've got huge revisions to areas of the map that we can immediately play test. And like I said before, without engineers that are, cognizant of the stability of the build, we wouldn't be able to do this as quickly. And that helps us turn around stuff very, very fast.
Cool. One thing I wanted to say before we move on, we're about to start to talk about the new map, is you heard Tomas say many, many times there, the concept artist, which is a really weird thing to say since Matt's sitting right there. That's because that's not Matt's work. He's doing the concept work on the new map that we're doing, but all the stuff that you saw, all those paint overs and many, many, many more concept pieces and paint overs are the work of Matt Core, who runs the Control Paint site. So if any of you guys want to see more of his stuff.
Yeah, his site has tutorial videos and stuff to help you learn how to do concept art and actually teach you what it's like from start to finish, sort of through the process. So check it out if you're interested in that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure he would be very pleased.
Yeah. Control Paint. Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the new map that no one has ever seen before outside of the office. Get ready for the most beautiful map
Yeah,
you've ever seen in your entire life.
Yeah, Nick says nobody's ever seen, but we've actually repeatedly over the last few months brought in people to play test it, and then we subject our alpha testers to it and all that stuff
So
too. Yeah.
most people haven't
So
seen
it
it.
hasn't been seen publicly.
Yeah. All right, so this is version 1 of the new map. There's lots of boxes and lots of gray, so I know it might be hard to read. I originally intended to fly through the map so you can all get a better idea, but so one thing we're trying to do here is create a smaller map. This map is at roughly the size of the Clash area in the current map, and just that space. It's pretty small. It's about, I guess, a third the size of the map that we're using right now. One of the goals we set out to do was to create a simple map that was much more straightforward for players to take in. We wanted to remove the high-level strategy and complexity to some degree, not entirely, but make it less important and make it more about just team fights and getting people into the game and into the action as fast as they can. So what you're seeing here is basically a long hallway that sort of winds off to the right a little bit. There's a path off to the left. There's a few capture points up that path, and it actually winds up. There's a tower sort of straight ahead here. So it'll wind up this way. There's a capture point. You can sort of see the light from the capture point up there. There's a bridge that goes across. Underneath here, there'll be another capture point. I'll get another perspective. So here's that same map. Here's the bridge across the top. The path along the bottom here is that left path. There was actually another point on the right that just went to a dead end. That was a pretty terrible idea. But and there was a point right in the middle, and that's where everyone died, and it was pretty terrible. But like I was saying earlier, I was, I was one of the the big flag bearers for removing a lot of the verticality, or not removing it entirely, but neutralizing the verticality in the first map. And then I was like, can I push it and have it be okay at all? So I put this big thing in the middle, and of course what happened is everyone was sniping, and but it wasn't that bad, but it was pretty bad. Like, the results of trying to clean that up meant that I had to have a lot of cover all over the place. So it was sort of defeating the purpose, and it made it harder to get around. So here's what it's like from up on top of that perch. As you notice, you can see a lot of things. Oh, wait. Yes.
I want to go to there.
That's what it's like. Yeah, you want to go there?
With a sniper rifle.
Yeah. That's where you went, and it was. I don't think Imani existed at that. No, maybe she did. Yeah. So this is what it looked like version 2. You probably noticed some pretty big changes, particularly in the middle. Imagine that.
Yeah.
So we still have the point off to the left. This still felt pretty strong. Players were definitely pulled along that path. And then in the middle, I just brought the verticality down to almost not exist at all. So that was pretty good. Here's the shift over from that first point to the side. We had a really long sight line here, and a lot of the height was roughly the same. So if you were a ranged character, you can pretty much mow down everything that came through here. But it was a very quick iteration. I think it was done in like an hour or two.
Yeah.
if that. So like, we were really, like I said, I wore this hat part-time, so it was like, here, we're just going to make a change, okay.
Yeah, and a lot of our process, we play test the game every day. And so we'll look at things that we're doing longer term, but Nick gets in the office a little earlier than I do, so my first stop before I get to my desk is just talk about what else are we getting in for today's build. And so, yeah, some of these iterations in the map were just conversation that morning of, I really didn't like this, really didn't like that, what do you think about that? And he's like, okay, I'll get it in.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's sort of, I think this was just one day to the next. These were pretty quick early on. And then there's just multiple, here's what it looked like from the middle now. You'll notice that the vantage point isn't as strong, but there's still not a lot of cover along the sides. You can see the guardian room in the back, so the map was clearly divided in half. But line of sight was definitely an issue. So I moved, so that's the end of the first revision. So I separated these into folders, so you'll have to excuse me for that.
So before we add the
Yeah.
color, so it's like, is it a U shape? Is it a semicircle?
It's like just one big S curve.
Yeah.
One big S?
So it just curves up, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. And you'll see it here. So this is actually, just make sure I open the right one. No, I didn't open the right one. Oh, nope, I did open the right one. I apologize. All right. So this was the second revision. This is going to be a pretty big change. In the first revision, it was pretty dark because the entire map was enclosed, and we were like, we want it to be a cave. And I threw some lights in there really quickly and roughly, and it just felt a little claustrophobic. I mean, being in a cave is going to make it feel that way. So we decided we want to try more of a canyon feel. So push that a little bit. There's a lot of changes in this version. So this is what the Titan room looked like. Previously, the only way out of the Titan room was that one doorway where I took the screenshot from before. So now there are 3 ways out of the Titan room. This would have put you right where those previous screenshots were taken. This is a sort of a back way out to sort of move along that path on the left. And then this one's sort of the shortcut down the right. So you see here's what it looked like in this revision. One thing I tried to do here is I added really ugly colored props just to call out sides of the map, because I'm just using cylinders and squares and all this other stuff that's untextured. We were having some difficulty, just even internal people going, where am I? Part of that's, and we were asking ourselves that question. It's like, is it the layout of the map, or is it just because the art is so terrible you can't really tell where you're going, and no effort has been given to lighting, and a wall looks like a floor? So you'll notice that I two-toned it a little bit, so the ground is a tan color. I actually think the artist scripted some of this out for a future version. It got migrated, the walls were darker, and I think they were a really ugly brown. And then I have these yellow props that are like, here's this side, the blue props were the other side. So these were sort of just functioning as cover. This path remained mostly the same. One of the more significant differences is down the middle, you can't see very far anymore. This was just me directly trying to combat the line of sight issues we had down the center of the map. One of the things we discovered when we were playing, if you played the game, is not just line of sight, but the important thing was that even if you had an open area, how long does it take to get the hell out of the open area, just in general? And you might say, oh, well, isn't that just line of sight? But based on how characters move and what their abilities are, it's a very different meaning, I think.
Yeah.
So,
I think one of the other things that we look at with getting hit from far away is it's not just the distances, but how many different places can you be attacked from? And if you're in any given space, what potential threats do you need to be aware of? And when that number gets too high, then the game breaks down.
Yeah, so like there's like this big yellow wall here. This big yellow wall didn't used to be here. That was just us going, well, line of sight sucked from there. We'll figure it out later. I'm just going to make the wall really tall. Screw those guys, right? So, it's just really quick and dirty. Here's actually what it looked like inside this side passage that was off to the left here. There wasn't really anything here. It was sort of just a high point for the defending team, and then you fell down, and that was it. It was pretty terrible, but come back to that. And here's what it looked like on the other side of the wall. So this is the way you got to that other side. So it was a way for people to shortcut through the map, and that's all they did, is they ran down that side of the map and avoided the other team entirely, and both teams passed each other like ships in the night, and no one ever fought.
And also that spot down there surrounded by all that high ground looks like an awesome place to hang out.
Yeah, That's where people hung out a lot. So basically,
Your corpse would hang out there.
Yeah. It was really, this is actually taller than it looks to some degree, and just with this entrance back here to the side, one team would come this way, the other team would go this way, and they'd just go to each other's guardians and never fight, and it was pretty terrible. This is what it looked like right down the middle of the map. I wanted to show this because this is the first time. There were a few iterations in between this version of the map and the previous one, but these forts here, which we called them forts, even though they're whatever. The concept of what the thing actually is completely abstract. We just gave stuff names. But ranged attackers would just sit up here and mow down people in the middle. So I added these rocks here so you could just jump up and just completely break things. And it worked out pretty well. But one thing that this did is it gave players some sense of direction for where the enemy's coming from if they're in that spot of the map. And I think that's really important. If you don't know, have a general idea of where the enemy's coming from, and you just are always getting shot in the back, it's never a good feeling.
Yeah, I mean, for us, as I said, it's a continual process of discovery as we go through these. You'll see some things that we sort of make fun of as like, oh, well, clearly that was a bad idea. But each time it's learning sort of the rules of, okay, what works in our game and what doesn't. And, trying to make sure that there are, like a lot of things we've talked about are like, okay, this point is too strong. But you want those points of strength that draw people in and give the fight some structure. Yeah, and it's just figuring out what are the right ways to mitigate that. How much do you need to limit the offensive capability versus how much you're giving the other team a chance to counter what's going on.
Yeah. Okay, and then here's what it looked like down, if you were looking down towards the Guardian room from their fort point. So you can see, if you could stand up here, you completely own the entire other team coming out of their base, which is why it was terrible. This is where we're at now. This room hasn't really changed, I think. This is where we're at now. No, I reset. I apologize. But it's true, that room hasn't really changed. And so this is when I changed. This is the next version. So this is actually sitting right outside of the Guardian room. One thing is, this point used to be way the heck over here. One thing we discovered is people just didn't care about that guy that you summoned there, and they just run right past him. So we wanted to make him more important. The other thing you notice is there's just more cover down the center of the map. And this is where we actually started thinking more about destruction, because when our Guardians move through the map, they break stuff to make it easier for your team. So like this area here breaks, and it actually flips to become a ramp for the other team, and it is sort of just this blocking thing so that they have cover while they're approaching your base and things like that. This pathway is still here to the left, on the left side, but there's no summoning circle in there anymore. This is also a version where we cut out half the summoning circles in the map. So there are
6.
There are 6 in this map at this point. So yeah, there's actually one here on the right that wasn't there before as well. I have a better image of that.
Yeah, it used to be everything was to your left coming out, and
Yep.
and not having that balance sort of made both teams kind of circle around each other.
Yeah.
And so switching it up so that you had sort of a V shape in terms of where your summoning circles were gave us a much better flow.
Yeah, here's what it looked like down the middle of the map. One thing you'll notice is, complained about cover, but those big long things that were here in the middle obstructing line of sight are gone, and partially because this camera is just high up for the screenshot, but like you only need so much cover to really protect the team when they're coming down the middle. So it's just enough that you could see glimpses of other characters, and if you were playing a sniper, you might get a hit in, but outside of that, you're really not going to be beneficial. At one point, we had too much cover in the map, and people that played the sniper felt like they just picked the wrong character. And it's about viability and keeping everyone relevant at that point. So it's a tricky balance when we start adding people like, oh, it's all of a sudden we have a sniper, and it's like, well, they need long sight lines to feel like they're doing their job, but how do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, and Nick talked earlier about the change from canyon to, or from cave to canyon. There may or may not have been me in the meantime while we're working on the map going, okay, I'm going to have this creature you can summon who flies up really high. So any spot where you can summon a creature, I want it to be, open ceiling.
Yeah, so that changed things a little bit.
Yeah.
So here's actually a look. Here's that first point that I took the picture from. Here's that new point on the side. One thing here is there's this little perch here. This sniper can cover your whole side of the map if they're sitting up on this perch on the inside around this pillar. One of the first iterations, too, we actually had this entire wall. When your Guardian rampaged, it would basically open up so you could just run onto the other team's side of the map, and you'd appear right over their fort. You'd actually come out right here, which wasn't very good, but it was
Too
like,
much.
hey, let's, will this actually be bad? I think it'll be bad. How long will it take to test? Oh, about 10 minutes. All right, let's try it. Well, that was a waste of 10 minutes, but we know it's bad now, for sure, so.
Now we learned something.
Yeah, so let's move forward. Another thing is I added this pit, so there's actually a big drop off here. These props here in the back are the ones on the far side. So actually a little bit of a ravine here. One of the things is, as we were working on the map and looking for landmarks, it was just like, oh, I'm always in a canyon. There's nothing that is different about any of these spaces. I'm always surrounded by walls. So it was like we dug a ravine through part of the map, and now when you're in those spaces, it does feel different. It's important that, players can mentally map where they are, and they can understand where they need to go next. And even though this map is so small, we wanted to have the level of complexity that keeps it interesting.
Yeah.
And it's sort of difficult when you're working with a map so small when it gets so complex to
Yeah.
call it the landmarks themselves. So.
Yeah, and one thing I want to say, I think we're going to be moving on to showing some concept art for this map fairly soon, but during this whole process, obviously a lot of the iterations talking about design, but we're also talking to the artists about what it's going to look like. One of the things that we set out to do with this map compared to the previous one was not have to do so many paint overs. And so we decided to approach the concept art a little bit differently, to talk about conceptual areas better up front, and also talk about progression, north, south, east, west, up, down, and what kind of flavor changes were going to happen in different areas in order to help create better landmarks.
Yeah. When he says stop doing paint overs, we actually painted over a lot of the areas that we thought we wanted, and then we changed it. So a lot of the paint overs you saw were for the final version, but there were a lot that were thrown out.
Yeah.
So,
Matt did a lot. of
yeah,
those.
which was, they were really cool, but yeah. So here's what it looks like if you're on the enemy side of the map and you're looking down towards our Guardian and you say, oh, wow, that's really open. That sounds terrible. But this opened up a new challenge, and that was, well, we have this really tight map, but this really big guy back there needs to fit in this space. How the hell is that going to happen? So that was a tricky problem. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. So I added, there's these rocks here in the middle of the map, and you can actually get behind these. You can actually come up here through the back. So there's lots of ways out of that space very quickly if you use your skills properly. Walking, it might take a little while, but we have big bursts of speed and stuff like that can happen all of a sudden. But that guy will also fit there. And when he falls down, you can actually walk around him, and he's not blocking the entire thing, which is completely a problem we had in earlier versions of the map. And it's pretty good. And then some other things is we lowered this a little bit in the back. You see there's a little ramp up here coming out of the fort. It all used to be that high, but even that subtle change goes a long way towards what you can see at distance and what cover you can see over. So little changes like that, they might go unnoticed, but they change things significantly sometimes.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. We were talking earlier about, how many places can you be attacked from a particular spot? And by adjusting some of the edges of, as Nick called it, the fort, you make it so that if you're trying to snipe out into the middle from up here, there are fewer spots on that wall that you can be at. So it's easier for an enemy to understand where they're getting attacked from.
Yeah, and the addition of this point up here on the side that we showed earlier gave attackers an option to come out, stay in cover, and push into their side, but not completely stay hidden. So you would see glimpses of them passing through, and you would know that they went through, but now you have to deal with them because you can't hit them. And I think that's it. Oh wait, no, I have more. What do I?
More boxes?
Yeah. You know what? These are all the same. I apologize. Sorry,
Okay.
lots of screenshots.
No, that's awesome.
So yeah, this is the new map. We've actually been playing it internally. Some people would argue it's more fun than the other map,
Yeah,
but
Yeah, one of the things that we're really happy with, so we've been playing it internally, but we also bring in a lot of people from outside and sort of get their impressions about the maps, and totally unprompted, a lot of times they'd say I feel like that's the first map that you should play in. Like, that's a great intro, because it's more compact, the paths through it, they're kind of just a few discrete ones. It naturally creates teamwork between players, because you just end up in the same spots. There are fewer points to be fighting over, so it's clearer where you should be. And so we think it works great as far as that goes. And I think we really like the larger map as well for its strategic diversity. But yeah, it definitely feels like we're well on our way in terms of creating a map that's the right map to start the game out in.
Yeah, and one thing that was really interesting is when we moved on to this map, we knew it would change how we feel about the game, but we don't make any role changes at all, other than just the map changing. And it changes things a lot more like it would in a shooter or something, because, action games and that. Whereas a lot of other games in the market, the map changes, but a lot of rule changes are made to facilitate the map, because the map is what drives a lot of the content in your experience. But when you play this map, you don't need to relearn anything, and we'll definitely be experimenting with more because of how much it freshens the experience and changes how you
Just
approach
because
things.
movement and sight lines, travel possibilities, where you can jump, where you can hide, matters so much in the game. We get a lot out of, just changing the layout on the map.
Yeah.
Okay, we should get to the cool stuff, and then look at some
Yeah,
questions.
let's talk about that.
When I first started at Motiga, it was basically just for this map. Matt Core was wrapping up the concepts, the final iteration concepts for Mistforge, and I just kind of had free reign to just play around, experiment, play with any idea that popped into my head. I knew starting out that it did need to be kind of an enclosed space, and I played with the cave idea early on, and that those early experiments gave me these ideas for just the, why you would be down there. What's the word? Thematically, or not thematically, but
Sure. But yeah, what's the world lore rationale? Like, what's going on down there?
the lore. And so I figured it might be something like a mineral resource or something. And within the lore, the race or the house most likely to be interested in exotic mineral resources to me would have been the machine people, the machine building people, Tessera's house. So have we?
Yeah. I mean, we haven't talked about that a ton, but one of the characters in the game that you can see at PAX is HK206, and he's this robot, and that's sort of indicative of the kind of technology that House Tesserus makes.
Yeah. So it's high technology, but it's kind of bouncy and a little clunky, but very crafted. And so there's a lot of kind of complex machinery going on that's not immediately apparent what it does, but it looks important, and yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah, the various ideas I played with were sort of giant geode structures that you would actually they would be broken open, and you would actually run through them in the map. There would be like summoning points in there. There might be crystal veins that have some kind of magical energy that leaks out. But this stage was still feeling around and just trying to find that narrative. And so once I got enough of that sort of just goofing around out of my system, I started to find ideas that sort of hung together, and themes that started to feel really consistent, and they supported each other. And this is where the shapes that I just was drawing, because they felt good, they found a purpose. And there are these collector hoods that you can see positioned over little gas vents or something. And so they're collecting some kind of magical gas that's used in their industrial endeavors. But while they're down there, they have these, there's structures, there's houses, but the part that was kind of, it didn't quite feel right at this point to me, was the fact that it's basically very similar from bottom to top. There's machines here, machines up here, and it felt kind of monotone. Like there would be no reason to expect the the density or type of structures at one end of the map to be any different from the other. It gives the impression that whoever is building stuff here is very comfortable just going in and putting things wherever they want. So that would be kind of a difficult fiction to support. Yep. I'm a lefty and it's a right-handed. What is it? Okay. So, while I was figuring, excuse me, I just inhaled some water.
Yeah,
While I was figuring that out, or letting it sort of ruminate, I started playing with ideas for just what kind of language I would use for rocks and plants and various sort of modular features that we could start working on really immediately, as soon as we can, just to start getting that gray box map feeling like something that sort of gets everybody in the same space, thematically.
Yeah,
and-
like even if the whole thing's not arted, the pieces that are in there set a tone and give people an idea of what it's
Right.
going to feel like.
Right, just to keep that sort of group cohesive vision bubbling.
And I have to say, it's a real treat as a designer to work with artists that are this thoughtful about stuff. You can see all these rad-looking rocks, and if you look closely, all these ones that say no, 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 by him as Matt's evaluating what he
Yeah,
thinks
yeah.
will work and what won't.
Yeah, I'm exploring here like extremes of various planar stylization, and so here's one that's pretty exaggerated as far as like this sort of slashy, hard edge, right angle cut. This is sort of the opposite here in the middle. These really like wind-rounded sandstone blocks, and the more common final solution that I'm pretty happy with, that we're actually moving forward with, is the stuff that's up here on the top and over here towards the left. This is kind of the direction that it's going. Actually, one of these rocks here we're using in our art test to find the new environment artist.
Yeah.
Okay. And so once I've got some strong ideas for the rocks, they're not just rocks, but just the individual visual languages that I want to use in this level. I start incorporating it into sketches that sort of combine these ideas in something that I intend to actually represent the way the game would look as.
And you can see here this starting to reflect some of the shapes that were in some of our earlier versions of the map too.
Right. Like this here in the foreground would have been that bridge, and just on the other side of that bridge is the hole where everybody dies.
Yep.
The starting area would have been back here, over on the right, and these structures hanging down from the upper reaches of the canyon. This is where I start to develop the idea that House Tesserus doesn't actually want to be on the bottom. Like, I didn't quite know yet why they didn't want to be down there, but they're taking great pains to keep all of their precious stuff up high, and they're lowering some kind of collector hoods down. So there's these structures that could be destructible at some point. They could be used, like you could use them to impede somebody's activity, like maybe somebody's casting or something. You want to interrupt them and you can blow something up next to them.
Or Roland could use his grappling hook to get up there and grief everyone. Okay, that gave very sad.
Yeah.
And here's a little more of that sort of, I call it the in situ explorations. Just ideas of how I want it, from a player perspective, these various sizes and languages to speak together. This giant dark wall of this curtainy rock back here. This is one of my favorite sketches so far.
Yeah.
This is just fun to look, and I want to be in there. I want to run around and just
That's awesome.
see that stuff. And there's vegetation, so I'm exploring different kinds of vegetation. Give you very different ideas of what kind of place you're in, where there's really exotic or a little more familiar. These are the more exotic flavors of things. And I think all that stuff will have a place in the map. Just especially in a small area, trying to keep it from looking homogeneous. Like I've hardly gone any distance at all. You need all kinds of things that very subtly shape that perception that you're actually going somewhere. So at some point now and then, I like to just do a sweeping overall contextualization of where things are, what the world is like around it. So this map, as I'm envisioning it, takes place in a remote canyon, this vast field of canyons, where House Tesserus, or people in their employ or whatever, they have this huge operation set up, and they are collecting something down in the bottom. I think at this point I had an idea what it was going to be, but
hadn't told the rest of us yet.
oh yeah. I think I forgot to put an image in here, but I'll just telegraph it in right now. Tesserus does not want to go to the canyon floor because they are afraid of ghosts. They are machine people, they understand machines, and there are ghosts down there. Now, what kind of ghosts do you find at the bottom of a canyon hovering around ancient rocks? There's obviously no civilization or anything like that down here. So they are ghosts of ancient sea creatures, trilobite ghosts. So you can see them wafting up from a vent, being collected by this hood. And so there's a lot of, there's some equipment down in the bottom of the canyon that is basically autonomous, requires very little maintenance. But, so you're not going to see much, if any, like, people getting upset about you damaging their stuff. But when,
But yeah, you've got these robots sort of self-repairing themselves, replacing themselves at times, so we can have fun with destruction in a different way. And yeah, I mean, to me, when Matt pitched the idea that it was trilobite ghosts, it was really, really fun. You know, you hear that and it's sort of, okay, that's not what I expected you to say. Or, you picture when he first said ghosts, this sort of cliche thing that, that could also be cool and moody. But picturing, an ancient seabed and just these sort of spectral forms of all the crazy ancient life forms there, and especially our, fantasy versions of those, and having those getting hoovered up by these, sort of clunky and bouncy machines, it just, that's when it really seemed like, okay, this is going to be a part of the gigantic world.
in the images I forgot to include, there are sketches of little robotic monitors, little just not quite full, fully autonomous Tesserus robots. They're stuck in place. They're like plumbing fixtures. And my idea is, I don't know if, is that...
Haven't okayed it yet. Go ahead.
When one of these stray ghosts floats by, this little robot monitors will see it and start shivering, and they'll clam up and hide because they really don't want to be down there.
Yeah.
They're just as scared of the ghosts as everybody else, but their job sucks.
Yeah. But yeah, one of the things we really wanted to do moving forward, we talked about trying to make a map that would be better as sort of an entry-level map, but also look at how much personality we were putting into things, whether we were really kind of fully capturing the gigantic spirit, and then also looking at more interactivity and more motion in the environment. So when we talk about, all these different machines that can get destroyed, that can kind of repair themselves, the different kind of vegetation in the map, a lot of this is Matt being whimsical, but it also comes out of our conversations about what we want to accomplish gameplay-wise. And then we try to give artists some space to be creative and then step back and try to riff off of the ideas they have. Cool.
I think that's all my images. Yep.
Okay.
So
Well,
it's
cool. Then I
from-
think we were ready for questions, if there are any. And again, I'll just say that we are looking for a senior environment artist who can put up with, I think you can see, a little less crazy process than it used to be, and then also an experienced level designer, especially with UE3 experience. The game is being made in Unreal 3. That can, step in, be part of the team.
All right, there we go. So we've got some folks who are asking some questions. While they queue up their questions, I'd like to see if there's anyone in the audience that would like to ask something of our group.
I got one.
No, you?
Thanks. Regarding the destructibles, like, I had no idea the balcony was even a thing.
Yep.
I thought that destroyed ramp was always there.
Yeah.
So, in the future, or maybe whenever, is there any way to indicate what is destructible and what isn't it? Is there any kind of color coding or markers used?
Sure. We try to use, in terms of the things that players can destroy, we try to use a kind of specific language on that stuff visually. In terms of the stuff that the Titans destroy, the Guardians destroy, there's not necessarily as much of that we do, but it's very fixed and doesn't change from match to match in the same map. We are expecting to do things like change the mini map to show where the destruction is, and a lot of other stuff, kind of call it out a little bit more than we do right now.
Even the player destructibles, I guess I never really noticed. I was just focusing so much on the beautiful art as it is and my own gameplay.
Balcony though, it's like I just played it and like
Yeah.
the first time I noticed it only because I got stuck in it.
Yeah.
I think part of it was that whole the way you designed that game to like make your skills on the fly and like shit happens though, which is cool because I'm like running through and like, oh that happened, okay, so I gotta find a way to move around or like I didn't notice it before.
I mean,
For those of you on the internet that can't hear what
Sorry,
our
yeah.
audience member's saying, basically shit can happen.
I mean,
Yeah.
just real quick to speak to the destructible stuff. I mean, we don't want to make stuff as gamey and telegraph it as much as maybe in the past that
Yeah.
games have done. We have been striving to make it as seamless as possible. We've had, Tomas and I have gone back and forth many times talking about how the lighting doesn't match or matches, or can we make the lighting better so that people don't know where the destructibles are. So it's actually intentional that we don't want you to know everything that's going to be destructible, because we don't want to take you away from the gameplay experience. If a railing blows up in front of you, we want that to be an experience that you're having in the game going, oh boy, the destructible cover just disappeared in front of me. I didn't even know that was there. We have large archways that you may or may not even know that, over the river you may see now that actually blow apart in different stages. And that's intentional so that, you may see a huge chunk blow off and go, the rest of this actually may destroy. I'm going to get out of here. And so that happens. There's a lot of stuff in the map that you may not have seen yet that actually blows up. And that is intentional for the most
Sure.
part.
But if it's vertical, kind of thin, not supported, it probably blows up.
Yeah.
So we've got a question from our friends on Twitch. Here's one from Basilil, good friend of ours. In terms of map balance, what do you look at first? How the map will affect a hero or the other way around?
I think we try to look at individual heroes, but also at just the mechanics on the whole. We understand that there are classes of things we need to look for, whether it's ranged attacks or different kinds of mobility. And what we've tried to do is establish a set of guidelines as we go on, so that every mistake that we've made helps clarify for us what's inbounds and what's not. We're really looking at the overall strategic flow more than anything else, and then looking at, from an individual spot, is there undue advantage for characters with abilities of type X?
Generally, it's a lot easier to solve the hero-specific problem than it is the high-level problem. So once we understand the high-level flow of the map and the strategy, we can make the subtle changes that are needed, if there are any, to help a character feel viable.
Using the power of technology, I'm going to check the Twitch channel while I'm taking a question from the person that
That
is
is
physically here.
fantastic, Troy.
That way they can hear what's going on.
Hey guys, first I love the style of Gigantic, and I got to play it just before coming here. It's awesome. It seems like you guys don't have an art director, but no, is that correct?
Yeah, there's no art director at
And
the
yet you
studio.
guys have cultivated one of the strongest visions in art direction, especially that I've seen come out of games recently.
Sure.
Like, I mean, there's like.
Yeah, so
what I
how
was
does
just
that
talking about.
work?
Yeah, well, how did that? When did you decide not to have a specific art director, and
Right.
when was when you guys decided, like, all right, we can just do this with our small team and
Yeah,
it'll be great?
So we didn't set out to kind of break any rules or say like, okay, we're not going to have an art director. The thing that I told the guys when we started looking was, we've got a really high bar for an art director because I've got a tremendous amount of respect for the artists on the team and felt like, this is going to have to be somebody really phenomenal to come in. And so, we started looking and we contacted people and we advertised for it and we went through resumes and looked at portfolios and talked to people, all the things you would do. But at no point were we going to compromise because the guys were too good. And then we just had to deal with the fact that we didn't have an art director. Fortunately, we have a very thoughtful art team. So it's not just a matter of, hey, they're good at making stuff pretty, right? But that they were able to talk to each other about what they were trying to do. I mean, you heard Matt talking a little bit and saw some of what his process was like, right? This is not like, hey, here's the thing, is it okay? Right? It's really thinking about what are the consequences of that. If you're here earlier, Tomas was showing some of the paint overs and sort of image manipulation that was done to just talk about like color balance and lighting, and Michael talked about that a little bit earlier too. So really, the way that it works is the art team talks to each other a lot. And it's not as efficient time-wise as if they didn't have to talk to each other, but I think it's better overall. And I'm not saying that having no art director is better overall, but I think it works for us that the thing I've tried to emphasize to the team as a whole, and this is design, it's how we work on engineering, so even how we schedule the project and how we do art, is it's about collaboration. And people have to be willing to talk to each other and, more importantly, listen to each other. So what we never do is vote about stuff. We never make a choice because more people like it. Ultimately, if there's a tough decision to be made, I'll make it. I'm in charge of the team. But very rarely, if ever, does it come down to that. Mostly it's me talking to the artists and making sure that they believe in what they want to do. And if they believe in it and it's consistent with what they're doing and sort of makes sense with the overall vision of the game, it's really easy for us to kind of keep stuff on track because they hold each other accountable. I think we did a character panel yesterday, and we showed one of the characters that some of them have gone smoothly, some of them have been remade many times, and that's because we thought we had it, and then somebody said, I don't think we're hitting the mark. And it wasn't a matter of like, oh, that person gets to say we're not hitting the mark. It was like, oh crap, you're right. We okayed this thing and it wasn't good enough. And this animatic you put together, or this paint over you did, or something kind of shows that. And I think it's a credit to the team. I should probably let the artists talk about it a little bit, but that they've been willing to go through that, because I think it really is. It's a challenge, for artists to be as open as they've been with each other, willing to take critiques from each other, and willing to be honest with each other. Do you guys want to touch on that at all?
Definitely, it's like we sit right next to each other. We're all in the same room, so it creates a really good environment to talk to one. Just walk over around a computer and see what the effects team's working on, or turn around and we see what the animators are working on. And there's always a lot of also like iteration on our stuff. Like, we always take feedback and we always try to improve. And you can see that in the maps, the effects, and the characters, and any of the art teams.
Yeah, I mean, to speak to that point, one of the things is, as effects artists, we usually come towards the tail end of a project. We usually get to work on stuff at the end of, a long process. But with this team, it's completely different. We are always sitting in at the beginning of map discussions, the beginning of character discussions, and we hopefully contribute to the development of that character. Also, we're in the back of our minds thinking, that's going to be a challenge. Maybe we should speak up now before the character gets through.
Sometimes you say that too, right at the beginning too.
Yeah, but in all seriousness, the team is different than one I've ever worked on before because of that dynamic where, we are all very comfortable to speak what we need to get out for professional reasons of making sure it's going to work in the end and having that foresight. But we also want to do crazy things that no one's ever seen before, which I think is evident through, what we've presented here with this project. And I think it's been very successful so far. But,
and then just to wrap up, when I talk about them being thoughtful, it's not just a matter of, right, like, I like this better. When they talk about it, they talk about, what impact it's going to have and what we're trying to accomplish. And as long as you've got a team, and not every team could do this, but with the guys that we've got, it's people who are capable of having that conversation, and that's how they're able to stay on the same page.
Just a quick word to the Twitch channel. Tomas is in a relationship, so please stop asking him if he is single. There's a lot of questions. I'm talking to
He's
you.
also not as nice as he seems, for what it's worth.
Yeah, exactly. He'll kill you. Got a waffle? Stop it. Hey, a lot of questions about map variety, about gameplay modes and
Yeah.
differing purposes for maps.
Sure. So it's not our intent to really deviate in terms of gameplay mode, though I think we're still going to explore sort of the boundaries of what it means to have a different map changing the way the game plays. We want variety, though. But it's always going to be power up your guardian's trying to kill help you kill the enemy guardian. In terms of number of maps, we'll see how many we can do. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're hiring more. We've looked at, sort of the rate at which we're doing stuff, what we've learned, and, what it's going to take to get more out. But there are certainly games where it feels like the map is the game, and that's not what we want. We want there to be a whole variety of maps that all feel like this is the game.
All right, one more audience question, and I think we're going to wrap it up. No? All right. Hey, panelists, thank you very much. This was a great workshop. Twitch folks are very, very impressed with what you did, and still asking about Tomas, so kind of creepy. Hey, folks, thank you in the audience for attending, and let's give them a round of applause.